Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Dublin Tech Talks. As always, we are brought to you by Icon Accounting. Icon, if you're not aware, are providers of end-to-end services for professional contractors with a speciality in the tech industry. Joined today by Dan Ring, who is head of research for Foundry. So Foundry is a visual effects studio, really interesting stuff. So looking forward to hearing all about what they do, and in particular the research component of the Foundry business. Dan, thanks for joining us today. Really interested in hearing all about what for me is a really fascinating industry, and great to see that it's here in Ireland. So this isn't something that has to be located in glamorous, far-flung locations. We're doing some really good stuff from Ireland. So could you maybe just tell us a little bit about Foundry? I've crudely classified it as a VFX, technology provider. I'm sure it's way more than that. So would you mind telling us a little bit about the business in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Foundry, we're essentially a software development company, but we specialize in making tools for the creative industries. So, particularly media, entertainment, and also design. It's about 25 years old. It started in London, Soho, and we kind of made our name for ourselves by building a lot of the special effects tools for assisting with how pictures change over time. So our first thing that put us on the map was we wrote the tools that stitch this sort of the images and blend the images for that matrix bullet time sequence. So that's
Oh
the
wow!
kind of kind of the things that
No, I
we
mean
do.
I may nerd out during this stuff, so don't worry about it.
Oh yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead here.
yeah, go for it. And then so yeah, so and that was that was a kind of a big achievement for us, but it was
Mm,
like it was the result of a lot of work in as I said, sort of understanding how pictures move and writing algorithms for giving artists kind of access to and control over those pictures and allowing you to do things that you just weren't possible before.
mm.
And then, so yeah, over the years, we've continued to kind of build out kind of our software portfolio, from working on 2D images to modeling 3D images to working with like virtual lights and rendering to like creating this tools for storyboarding. So creating those panels that kind of that you use to kind of pitch an idea or a story and develop a story, and how you do that digitally, and how the world between sort of the analog and digital plays between each other, and that, as well as what are the things to do? Yeah.
I think that's plenty.
Modeling animation tools. Yeah, I think I've forgotten. I think we have a couple of. Oh, yeah, in the design space as well. Then we also wrote tools for shoes. So for designing shoes for
Oh,
Adidas, New Balance, Nike, and then yeah, designing sort of like they're representing the dashboard for Mercedes and things like that.
okay.
So
So
um,
I mean, there's so many practical applications of that, but essentially it's helping take that creative idea to, test the limits of what we've traditionally been able to do and present visually, and just give people the capability to get the thing out of their head and onto a storyboard or a piece of film or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you could think of us as we're the people who like we are not artists ourselves, but we
Mm,
understand artists and we understand how to make very nice digital paintbrushes. But
mm,
ultimately, it's just it comes down to sort of I mean, the way we kind of describe it is we try and take the drudge work out of the creative side, so that to make sure that the creative people can just be creative as soon as possible. And I think that's I mean, we're lucky that kind of in the industry that we work in, we get to work with some very fun people, very fun customers. So like we end up working with the people who make Star Wars, who
mm.
make Disney and Pixar films. And yeah, so that they've like their expectations and quality kind of demands are
Absolutely.
so high. I mean, obviously, if you've watched anything on Netflix or been to the cinema, you know that the kind of the what you expect from that
Mm,
is high. Like we are accustomed to having fantastic experiences, both
mm.
from a visual perspective, but also from the aesthetics of your shoes. Like you want
Yeah.
them to obviously look fantastic, and so we're very privileged to work with people who have these sort of like kind of high demands and kind of
Mm.
and will work closely with us to make sure that they're met.
Because it's funny you mentioned the Matrix, right? And I think for me, that was probably one of the first movies where, visually, with the time lapse sequence and stuff like that, it was something that I hadn't seen before. Visually, it jumped off the screen. And I know there's, with compassing and, rotoscoping, tracking, all that, or whether it's robots or aliens on the screen, it's very obvious, the CGI element and the visual effects. But what some of the stuff that I've become aware of more recently is much more subtle, right? And so it's kind of like day shoots that you can now make into a night sequence, where you don't have the practical challenges of trying to film what you want, in poor light conditions.
Yeah.
So is there the Big Bang stuff that is great and visual popcorn, but is there a lot of work that is very subtle and you wouldn't really notice?
I mean, honestly, most of the work there that our customers do is on this invisible side. So
Mm.
you can imagine that from the moment a picture is captured on camera, like after principal photography, is you can imagine there's a whole number of stages that have to pass through before that gets to the silver screen, to your Netflix app on your TV. So yeah, there's like depending if you're doing like kind of the big thing, putting in a creature from Star Wars, then that's going to take a huge amount of effort, and that's that. But yeah, I mean, nearly every picture has to go through a huge number of those stages, and our software is used in, I'd say, between 90 and 95% of those for everything that you see. If it's feature film, I think we said that. Yeah, I think like if you look back at the Oscars, I think from at the previous wins, every film that's won has used our software, and at least one package, one of our packages, and this goes from period dramas to to the massive Star Wars and Marvel shows. So yeah, you can tell then that even if you have a shot from like night or day, or removing like a beauty work happens a lot. So anytime like you see an actor's face where the makeup might not have been applied perfectly, you've got to like do a little tweak to kind of remove a mole, or remove like kind of crease lines or things like that. All of those little things, and there's hundreds of thousands and probably millions of those that go into every show. And so even the most even the most simple of kind of documentaries will usually still have things like even have parts of the image treated. So for example, you've filmed something and you want to replace the logo of something, or you're not allowed to use a logo, but you can't just blur it. You want to replace it with something else that.
Yeah, of course.
And this could be on the background, like you're interviewing somebody who's right here, but in the back of the shot, there's something there that you need to remove. And yeah, so our software is about like letting you do that as quickly as possible, so that like because it's just a background task. Like you should just do it and be done with it and not have to worry about it. And that's kind of the aim of what we try to do.
And it's definitely making that technology more accessible. I think I read somewhere that the cinematographer for Knives Out used the Nuke software on his laptop just between shots and at home in the evening and stuff. So, has that been facilitated by the rise in the computing power on machines, and the platform from a cloud perspective to be able to share and change data? Has that been a factor in enabling your technology?
So I mean, like cloud computing certainly helps. I would say in that case, it's usually down to the fact that like a lot of the software that we write has become industry standard, and it's the lingua franca for how you work with data. So our package Nuke that you mentioned, you could imagine it as a kind of a hub where a lot of data comes in to be operated on, and it's usually where the final pixels like come out. It's where the kind of the last decision of like what the picture is going to look like is made. So yeah, for something like having a laptop out and kind of tweaking things live, it's, I suppose, like Nuke certainly lets you do that, but I think the kind of the reason why you want to do that is because of the kind of control and flexibility that it gives you. And I think it's like it is very much an engineering tool for artists. So if you're in any way creative and you can kind of express a problem that you have, like an imagery based problem, if you can express that in a kind of a neat way, and you know what you want to achieve, it is very natural of how you break down that problem into kind of steps to kind of start processing and reviewing, and then once you've made that decision, um, because it is in Knives Out example, because it is sort of industry standard, when you save that changes for how you see it on set, you can then just take that file and then hand it off to somebody in post-production, and you can say, this is the thing that I've decided, and they can go ahead and
Make it
work on
happen.
it. Yeah.
Cool. So and so your position is head of research. What's tell me about like what is it that your function is? What's the research component of the business?
Yeah, so I mean, Foundry has had a really strong kind of research arm for, I mean, ever since its sort of inception. So the matrix work that I mentioned before, that came out of work that was entirely around sort of research focus, like algorithms that came from kind of academic papers on how you manipulate like images, and then so that sort of kind of stayed constant as the company has grown. So we've kind of quite a large research team for considering the kind of size of the company,
Mm,
and our work is around sort of investigating the more speculative sides of kind of the media, entertainment, and design industries. So it's figuring out like kind of what trends are happening now, what things do we need to keep tabs on. Are there ways of taking things like that are like interesting in academia and bringing them into the hands of the artist? And it's that
mm,
like in like kind of my goal outside of research is helping make that transition between kind of the really out there things and the kind of the
mm,
like kind of blending the worlds between the kind of like the possible, like in theory, with
mm,
what the artists actually need right now in order to
mm.
make their lives easier and to get them kind of home on time.
And are there any trends without giving away any trade secrets of what's coming down the line? Where do you see the future scope for effects?
Yeah, so it's a great question. There's a couple of really good areas that we're keeping tabs on. I think one of the things is obviously machine learning and AI is a
Mm,
huge topic. The thing that we're interested in it and the take like our take on it is definitely not that we don't believe that machine learning is going to be this one button that does everything and solves every problem,
mm,
and then does away with that person's job. So the more we've sort of probed that idea, the more we realize like a lot of the stuff that people do, particularly artists, is really hard. Like it's like the kind of as I mentioned, the kind of the high kind of quality barriers and qualities and expectation levels. It means then that like these artists are really well trained. Like there's,
mm,
it's it, it's very unlikely that a machine learning button is going to replace them. So
mm,
instead, we're really focused on understanding how machine learning can assist an artist. So it's definitely assist and not replace.
mm,
And the idea here being is like how can we ensure that the artist is not aware that something is say machine learning enabled in the fact that the artist is just doing their thing, and then as they're doing it, the system can learn from what they're trying to do. It can see that, okay, I can, based on you having done this task before, I see like you might want to do this thing, or I can
mm,
just or you can take it, the artist can take it say 20% of the way. The system can recognize where it's going to go and can then deliver another say 60%, and then
mm.
hand it back to the artist to do the kind of final 20% where the bulk and the hardest kind of
Yeah.
parts of the work are there. So that's
Mm.
the first thing. Machine learning, I think,
I think that's
is
interesting. That's kind of like, I mean, my take on a lot of machine learning stuff is that it's to augment people, and it's that convergence of where technology can supercharge and enable, the human to remain more focused on that creative element. And I guess that's,
yeah.
the best example of that can only be in an artist situation, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the kind of the people who we've seen have made the kind of the best use of machine learning in our industry are definitely kind of artists who are also technologists and have
Mm,
started dabbling with this and sort of picking out the pieces from academia that make sense. And things like de-aging is a really good
yeah.
example where
Mm,
de-aging has been it's a super expensive process to do if you want to do it manually. And there's folks who have been kind of playing with it to see how, can they say take Robert De
the
Niro
Irishman.
from The
Yeah.
Irishman and then
Mm,
de-age him with machine learning techniques. And the interesting thing there is that it does get you a long way away. Like it's still not at
mm,
the fully believable level. And the challenge there, which is it kind of sums up our kind of our approach to this, is that if you just do it that way, it'll still leave you short. And if there's no way for an artist to correct that, like to fix it and to get it to that
Mm.
last mile, that last kind of few percent, it's not usable, and they have to
Yeah.
go back to the very beginning and do the whole process manually. So
Mm.
our take is like, how do we ensure that we can get to, get the artist like as far as possible, and then still have it in a form that's familiar to them, that they can then
Mm.
manipulate to
Mm.
the final percent.
Cool. Then the second thing you said?
So the second thing is a thing called what's called virtual production. So it's if you may be familiar with how a lot of films these days are shot on say green screen,
Yeah.
and the idea being later on you replace the green screen with a big background, and the fully digital background, and over the years we've seen sort of a trend towards people wanting to see what the background will look like in advance. So when you're on set, you have a little monitor that is like taking in the green screen and the live picture, and it knows where the camera is, and it does a little render offsite, and then composites the two images together so that the director can see the kind of
Mm.
the scale of the background, you can see the colors, and get a kind of sense of how to frame the shot. So it means then the director can say, well, like I'm panning across this camera, but there's a
Mm.
really nice bit of the background here that I need to get in, so I'm going to pan out a little bit more.
Mm. Mm.
And that's, people have been working like that for a good few years now. But kind of, I'm not sure whether it's COVID driven or not, but there's been a shift now towards this sort of new, well, COVID has helped, I suppose, but there's this sort of new technology used, which is called like in-camera VFX. So
Okay.
the idea being that instead of having a green screen behind you, you shoot in where within what's called like an LED volume. So imagine like a whole like um, an open semi-open cylinder of LED kind of pixels, if you will. So
Okay.
imagine like kind of a huge stack of kind of a curved like TVs essentially,
Yeah.
but with a really really kind of high resolution of the whole thing.
Sure.
And the idea being here that in advance, you can, if you have your background that you say, imagine you've got a big castle or something, or
Mm.
a spaceship, you then, instead of doing a green screen
Yeah.
thing, you then say to the wall, I want to draw this. Like you basically paint on the
Mm.
castle or the wall or the background, and then that looks like a wall, it looks like the thing that's the
Castle.
background that you want.
Yeah.
So as soon as you film it,
Mm.
then with the characters in it, you immediately see
Yeah.
what you're going to get, and there's no the director can actually also see around shot as well, and say, oh,
Mm.
actually, if we point the camera there, I'm going to get this other nice thing.
Yeah.
I completely forgot that was going to be there, so let's move things around and shoot from
Mm.
that angle. So
And
it
I
gives
guess
you
from
kind
an
of,
actor's perspective as well, that leads to more engagement, so you don't get that slight offset eye focus or something that just ruins the illusion slightly. Yeah. Mm.
exactly. And the other kind of really big thing about this though is it lets you, it what controls the light. So because it is like the background, all
Mm.
of the light that's being cast on the actors is kind of correct. Like if it's
Yeah.
if it's a spooky, gloomy castle that has like kind of, gray or blues, like the
Mm.
character is going to be covered in grays or blues, and
Mm.
not
Mm.
like not green from the green screen.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Which so the green screen world, you also have to shoot in a very evenly lit scenario
Mm.
or
Mm.
setup. So it means then that if you have to kind of add in all this extra fake light after the fact, and you have to darken
Mm.
things and tweak things. Whereas with this sort of in-camera VFX world, the light is being provided by the LEDs, and you get this, you get kind of true
Mm.
enough light. And so yeah, it's very good from a as a director of photography. It means then like you can then say, oh well, I don't like the way that the light is being cast here, so I'm going to put
Mm.
in a virtual light, and the virtual light is then driving the kind of the intensities of various pixels on this wall,
Mm.
and so that they're then able to drive and kind of get a better picture of this of this light. So you're giving kind of more creative freedom to the
Mm.
director of photography, and
It's fascinating.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So
so,
that's a huge, yeah.
so everyone, anyone watching this immediately wants to quit their job and work in an industry like this. So, how do people get into the industry, or specifically in what are the types of skills and attributes people need to have to work in the research element or in the business generally? Do they have to come from a creative background? Are people from a coding background of interest? Is there a blend?
So I mean, we have a mix of everybody from creative backgrounds to highly technical backgrounds to maths, chemistry, PhDs. Like it's a huge mix. In the kind of more like kind of product development or like software development teams for products, it'd be typically more like say computer science and software development backgrounds.
Yeah.
We do have kind of a strong like in the product specialism stages areas. They would be more creative. They are, and I mean, I should say that the creative people are also highly embedded in the software development teams as well.
Of course.
And then in the research team, we typically hire folks that have done some sort of postgraduate degree. Usually it doesn't like it usually has to be in the area of like computer graphics or like data science. But we've hired people who've had backgrounds in like I said, maths or chemistry. And it really is like, often it comes down to kind of the person. Like you have to, it's usually down to the nature of the person. In say research, for example, it's the challenge is kind of going very deep on these like on the engineering side to these creative problems. So it needs a kind of a person who's who's not afraid to kind of ask a lot of hard questions for which there may not be any answers, for which you might be responsible for answering. And I think we do like to hire the kind of more naturally inquisitive, the more autonomous, like self-motivated, self-driven, as well as people who generally have to have an interest or passion in films as well. So we also have people who have made films on the team as well, like feature films, and have kind of come into the industry from kind of orthogonal angles.
Well, I suppose the research, from what you've said, the research component where you're, quite embedded in the university space, and talking to people about, emerging research, that would lend itself well. Having a research-oriented mindset and experience can only help with that, right? Because that's that world and the technology world are, not necessarily as joined up as perhaps they should be.
Oh yeah, I mean, the way we see it is that there is a very clear like continuum between sort of the kind of the world of academia and us and our customers and I think ultimately it always comes down to problem solving. That's the shared thing between all of us. It's just the manner of like how you like what problems you're trying to solve, how you're solving them, and who you're solving them with. And I think we're very fortunate to be in a kind of a lovely position that we get to work with everybody along this line, along the spectrum. And we're very lucky. We also, I also should say, like one of the reasons, so we're half of the research team is based here in Dublin, the other half is in our headquarters in London. But one of the things we've noticed is particularly for Ireland, we do have the kind of the folks that come out of Irish universities, particularly for computer science and graphics and data science as well, is that they do often have this sort of this nature within them, that there is a kind of a lovely kind of like I don't know, like is it a personality trait or something or behavior, but it does seem that like we do have kind of higher like kind of more of these people who are just naturally gifted at exploring things in a kind of a creative way, like so
we'll claim that as uniquely Irish, uniquely Irish trait, whether you're born here or not. If you've lived here for a while and immerse yourself in it, I think it's definitely we like to talk, we like to listen, we like to figure some stuff out. So I know certainly the data science postgrad stuff and third level stuff here has a brilliant reputation internationally in particular. So
but
look, this has been super interesting, Dan. I could talk all day, but I guess if people are interested in your business or the industry, they should just keep an eye on what's happening on the websites and maybe reach out to you if they've got any queries about your business. Or
absolutely, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. More than happy to chat further.
Great. Well, look, thanks for your time today, and have a great day.
David, thank you very much for having me.
No problem. So thanks again to Dan. That for me was really interesting. That would be a dream job. But anyway, look, thanks for watching again today. As always, if you want to be kept updated on these interview style podcasts or some of the meetup stuff that we're doing virtually, just go to our meetup.com page, Dublin Tech Talks, or you can look at the social channels on LinkedIn for news on what's coming up. So again, thanks to Icon Accounting for their continued support. Thanks for checking in, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.